Shut Arkham City down. It's out of control.
Shut it down. By the end of tonight, I will be a hero, just like you. Batman.
Arkham City needs no introduction. It is just one of the best video games ever. It is so good that even a decade and a half since it came out, the game is still alive, with thousands of old and new gamers playing it daily and longtime fans creating all sorts of content. From extensive video essays to comprehensive retrospectives, reviews, analyses and everything in between. It feels like there's nothing new to say about this game, except that there is. Kind of. Batman Arkham City was such a groundbreaking success in 2011 that DC Comics created actual comics based on the game. Comics that barely anyone ever talks about. As much online attention as Arkham City keeps getting, it is quite rare to find articles or videos about these comics. And that's too bad, because these forgotten comics of Batman Arkham City changed the way that DC presented comics based on the Batman video games. Before Arkham City, DC only created short booklets that were somewhat connected to the games. The first of these mini-comics came out in 2003, with the video games Batman, Dark Tomorrow and Batman, Rise of Zin Tsu. In Dark Tomorrow, these booklets feature some of the same characters that appear in the game, although the stories are barely connected. Meanwhile, for Batman Rise of Zin Tsu, DC created their first digital comic strip, which was a basic adaptation of the same plot of the game, and it was uploaded on a weekly basis to the now forgotten portal America Online. Unfortunately, the website no longer exists, and because the comic has never been physically printed, it has become a true lost media, and one of the most obscure Batman comics ever. These early comics based on Batman video games were nothing special, but things started to change in 2009 with Batman Arkham Asylum. This was the first video game of the Batman Arkham franchise, and it was so good that it completely revolutionized the superhero genre of video games. For this game, DC Comics also created a booklet, but this one was a special item, only available in the collector's edition of the game. It was called Batman Arkham Asylum: The Road to Arkham, and it was a short prequel to the game itself. In the story, we get to see Batman going after the most important villains of the game, like Mr. Zsasz and the Scarecrow, stopping their evil plans and sending them back to Arkham. The story then shows us exactly how Batman stopped the Joker right before the game begins. And as Batman takes Joker back to Arkham, we also get a short scene of Harley Quinn getting everything ready for the Joker's ultimate master plan inside the asylum. The Road to Arkham was the first time that one of these booklets expanded the story of the game and showed us a little bit more of what happens in that universe. The story was written by Alan Burnett, one of the key creators of the DC animated universe and a very close friend of Paul Dini, who was the main writer of Arkham Asylum. And the story was illustrated by Carlos de Anda, who was also the main character designer for the game. Arkham Asylum was a groundbreaking success, and Carlos de Anda went on to become the main character designer for the upcoming sequel. Paul Dini also returned as the main writer on the second game, called Batman Arkham City, which quickly became one of the most anticipated video games of 2011. Warner Brothers went so hard with the marketing campaign for the game that DC was able to create the first comic book miniseries based on a Batman video game, with Carlos de Anda as the artist and Paul Dini as the writer of a 5-issue limited series called Batman Arkham City, which is not confusing at all. The series has the exact same title as the game, which is probably why this comic never became as popular as the game itself, because it sounds like it's only an adaptation. In reality, the series could have perfectly been called The Road to Arkham City, because this one is also a prelude to the game. And as a proper comic book series, this one fully bridges the gap between the first and second games, with a lot of detail. The story opens up with Quincy Sharp going from being the warden at Arkham Asylum to becoming the mayor of Gotham, taking full credit for stopping the Arkham riots. All of this, however, was part of the evil master plan of Hugo Strange, who also arranges a terrorist attack that destroys the Gotham City Hall. This attack allows Sharp to move on with his plans of turning a big part of the city into a massive prison complex, and that's how Arkham City was born. The story also shows us what happened to the Joker after the events of Arkham Asylum. The Titan toxin has completely infected the Joker's body, and his health is rapidly declining. When the time comes for the Joker to be transferred into Arkham City, the guards of the asylum decide to kill the clown once and for all. But before they do it, the Joker is saved by Harley, and together they escape the asylum on a boat, until they are confronted by Batman. The Dark Knight takes no chances and blows up the boat, but the Joker and Harley manage to swim all the way to Arkham City, where they decide to take over the steel mill. And that's a great way to explain how the Joker ended up in that place. Now, at this point, Batman still doesn't know who is the real mastermind behind Arkham City, and to find out he goes undercover inside the prison. Once there, Batman learns that Penguin and Joker are fighting for control of the place, allowing us to see and understand how this whole conflict began in the first place. Batman also comes face to face with the Tiger Forces, the new security team of Arkham City. The Tiger Forces would have captured Batman too if it wasn't for Catwoman, who shows up to save Batman for the first time in Arkham City, and as we all know, it won't be the last.
Figured you could use my help.
You're right. I think I chipped a nail back there.
You stick with the brooding, I'll handle the wisecracks.
Catwoman then tells Batman how she helped Poison Ivy to escape the Tiger Forces, and how Ivy then asked Catwoman to water her plants, which sounds silly, but it's important for the plot of the game.
Are we not done yet, Ivy? I told you that thing with the flowers wasn't my fault. You know it, I know it.
You should have watered them. You said you would water them.
Now, there's a curious detail here, as the story shows that Ivy stays in a park, but in the game we find her in a building. So maybe in the original story there was a park inside Arkham City, which would have been interesting even though it wouldn't make sense in the context of a prison. And maybe that's why this building looks more like a jungle. By the end of the series, Batman finally learns that Hugo Strange is behind Arkham City, but before he could do anything, Strange makes his move and announces himself as the man in charge of the prison. Strange then allows Mr. Sass to escape from Arkham City, only so that he could be recaptured by the Tiger Forces and make the GCPD look bad. All of that was just part of the master plan to give the Tiger Forces a special license to start rounding up people all over Gotham and take them to Arkham City, which is exactly how the game begins and how this little series comes to an end.
Hands in the air, Wayne. We have Wayne.
Target secured.
This prequel was groundbreaking when it came to comics based on video games, and thanks to the popularity of the game, DC started doing more comics based on Arkham City. But there was a catch. The new comics were released as digital comics first, before getting a printed version, and they were also called Batman Arkham City, which is probably another reason why these comics remained so unknown. This new series also didn't have a consistent creative team, as Paul Dini shared the writing duties with Derek Fridolfs, while all 7 chapters were illustrated by different artists. And lastly, the series was yet another prequel that answered a lot more questions about the game and how things came to be. In this series, we get to see how Hugo Strange goes about recruiting soldiers for the Tiger Forces, brainwashing them and using chemicals to turn them into loyal soldiers that follow his every command. This is how Strange commands the Tiger Forces to go into Gotham and capture everyone that he tells them to. Things get so bad that even minor criminals like the Carpenter become targets for the Tiger Forces. Batman realizes how quickly things are changing now that Arkham City has started operating, and he goes out of his way to help the Carpenter to leave Gotham before she is taken by force. And I just love how Paul Dini managed to include this wonderful character from his Batman run into the story of Arkham City. Then there's a Riddler chapter, where we get to see how he managed to break out of the holding cells of Arkham City and created his perfect base of operations, from where he keeps an eye on every corner of the prison. It's a story that explains how the Riddler managed to spread all of his annoying challenges and question marks across Arkham City. Another one of the great mysteries is how exactly was Robin able to go in and out of the prison in the middle of the game, and that is finally explained in the 4th chapter of this series, where Robin finds a secret underwater tunnel that connects Gotham to Arkham City. In the story, Robin uses this tunnel to check out Arkham on the opening day of the prison. Once inside, Robin goes to see the doctors at the church, but he also notices Harley Quinn stealing medicine from other prisoners, which of course she's doing because of the Joker's health problems. Robin tries to stop Harley, but he has to leave the place quickly to avoid drawing attention to himself. In the morning, however, Bruce gives Tim back one of his batarangs that he had left in Arkham City, which is a great way of showing us that Batman already knew what Robin was doing, and that's why he's not surprised when Robin shows up in Arkham City later on.
If you need me, you know where I am.
I know. Now go.
Following that, there's a Bane chapter that shows us what happened to Bane after Batman defeated him in Arkham Asylum. The GCPD eventually found Bane and arrested him, sending him into Arkham City once the prison started working. Once inside, Bane slowly recovered his strength thanks to a hidden stash of venom, and then he started an underground fighting club where everyone could challenge him. This was just an excuse for Bane to keep up his addiction to venom. One day, however, a new challenger appears, someone who is bigger and stronger than Bane. Someone that could have destroyed him, except that his body breaks down in the middle of the fight as a result of Titan poisoning. This is how Bane becomes obsessed with finding Titan in Arkham City to make himself stronger, which also explains his side mission in the game.
How much more did Joker manage to get off the island?
Too much. That is why I am here. I will not allow the basura of this city to abuse the Titan.
The series also had a couple chapters about the Joker, Scarface and Mr. Freeze, but unfortunately these stories don't explain anything about the characters or their context within the game. It was a very weak way to end the series, but once again, thanks to the huge success of the game, DC was able to create another series based on Arkham City in 2012, and this time it had an original name at last. Batman Arkham Unhinged was another digital comic series first, with a printed version published later. Paul Dini was no longer part of this new series, leaving Derek Fridolfs as the main writer, working alongside a number of different artists. Arkham Unhinged started out in the same way as the previous series, creating prequel stories about how things came to be in Arkham City. In the first couple of chapters, the series reveals how exactly Hugo Strange managed to lock up Catwoman and Two-Face, sending the Tiger Forces after both of them. By this point, however, the prequel stories were getting a bit repetitive, so the next few chapters featured original stories set in the Arkham universe, which were not very interesting, because they had little to no connection to the events of the game. Arkham Unhinged definitely had a rough start, but things eventually changed in Chapter 5, as it revealed the full origin story of the iconic twins of the game, Mr. Hammer and Sickle. These were brand new characters introduced in Arkham City, but the game barely provided a quick background about both of them. And that's why in Chapter 5 of Arkham Unhinged they finally get an expanded origin story, where it is explained how these conjoined twins from Russia grew up in a traveling circus, and they gained a reputation for being ruthless and violent. Eventually, the circus went all the way to Gotham, and the Joker became interested in the twins, sending Harley to kill the owner of the circus and take the twins into his gang. The twins were quite big and strong, but they couldn't move well, and in their first fight with Batman, they lost. Following that failure, the Joker decided that the twins would be much more useful if they were separated. In order to do this, the Joker talked to one of the doctors at Arkham Asylum called Thomas Elliot and offered him a lot of money to separate the twins. The Joker then set up a trap for the twins and knocked them out, so that Thomas' future Hush Elliot could operate and separate them. But then, after the surgery, the Joker had a change of heart and decided he only wanted the right-handed twin, telling Harley to get rid of the other. Harley, of course, had the brilliant idea of dropping the unconscious twin at the doorstep of the Iceberg Lounge, where the left-handed twin was picked up by the Penguin and became part of his gang. All of this happened sometime before the events of the first game, and by the time Arkham City begins, the twins have already created their own gimmicks with Hammer and Sickle, becoming some of the most unique enemies of the game.
Surprise, B-Man! Meet Mr. Hammer. He's gonna teach you some manners.
And this is one of my favorite chapters of the series, because it provides a lot more context about these minor characters of the game. Another one of those moments happens in the next chapter, where Robin goes undercover into Arkham City, this time disguised as a prisoner. Once inside, Robin infiltrates into the museum, where the Penguin is holding a secret fighting arena. The last man standing on this battle royale gets to join the Penguin, but in the middle of the fight, Penguin decides to increase the challenge and releases one of his Titan monsters to fight all of the thugs. Then the fight is interrupted by Bane, who breaks into the arena to take the Titan from the Penguin. Bane is now strong enough to take down the Titan monster, but Penguin has a secret weapon, and he unleashes Solomon Grundy against Bane. That is one of the greatest moments of the series, as we get to see an epic battle between Bane and Grundy, probably for the very first time ever. But Bane is no match for the immortal zombie, and Grundy sends him flying away from the museum. After the fight, Robin decides Arkham City is way too dangerous for him to go alone again, and Bane retreats to his hideout, where he starts planning his next move to get the Titan formula. Meanwhile, the Penguin's men manage to lock up Grundy in the basement, and all of this is a perfect setup for what we find when we play the game, which makes reading this series such a satisfying experience. That chapter is fascinating, and it's even more interesting because this is the first Batman comic illustrated by a very young Jorge Jimenez. It's always fun watching two massive characters fighting each other, so naturally they did it again in another chapter where Killer Croc fights with Mr. Hammer. In the story, the Joker and Penguin's men are using the sewers to infiltrate each other's territory. Penguin's thugs even manage to capture the Ratcatcher, who makes his first real appearance in the Arkham universe in this story. Now, as we all know, the sewers is territory of Killer Croc, and that's how the Joker's men come across him. Mr. Hammer is the only one capable of fighting back against Croc, and this is a brutal fight at first, but then Hammer starts talking to Croc, making a deal with the monster. And I really like that because Hammer actually reaches out to the human side of Croc. In fact, this whole chapter is also an origin story of Killer Croc in the Arkham universe, allowing us to understand how Waylon Jones lost his humanity. As always, he has a skin condition that gives him a really thick skin, but it also leaves him completely exposed to the darkest side of society. Arkham Unhinged really did a great job of expanding the universe of the game, creating full stories about characters like Killer Croc, who only got a small cameo in the game.
I don't need to fight you, Batman. I just need to wait. And then I will feed on your corpse.
The series also had a couple of chapters that happened after the events of the game. In one of them, Poison Ivy breaks into the safe vault of Arkham City and realizes that Catwoman intentionally killed her plant. Now Ivy is out for revenge, and she works with Harley to kidnap Batman and lure Catwoman into a trap. Now, a lot of things about this story don't really work, like the continuity and the characterization, but it's clear that the series started to ignore all of that, and they just created the stories for fun, making them interesting and good-looking, without worrying too much about the timeline. Another example of that is the Mad Hatter story, where he finally recovers from the beating that Batman gave him. This story takes advantage of the fact that the Mad Hatter was never locked away, so in this new chapter he goes out once again, and this time he kidnaps Vicky Vale and dresses her up like Alice. Not only that, but he also gets Catwoman and Poison Ivy to become the Queen of Hearts and the Cheshire Cat. Eventually, Batman shows up to save them all, but the Mad Hatter manages to escape, and it's just another fun story of something that never happened in Arkham City. And there were a lot of these stories in the series, like the one where the Penguin hires Deadshot to kill the Joker, but the plot twist is that Deadshot was actually Clayface. Then there's also the story where Two-Face organizes a trial against the Joker, with a lot of the villains as members of the jury. Now, as fun as these little stories are, they are not possible in the context of the game, and after just a few of them, the series eventually stopped doing that and went back to creating stories that could be connected to the plot of the game, and the next one is my absolute favorite chapter of the series. The story from issue number 12 takes place in the late parts of the game, and it is called Repentance. In the story, all of the doctors, the reporters and the political prisoners have gathered inside the church, as it was the only safe place in Arkham City, protected by the security forces of Aaron Cash and his men. This was a safe haven until the real prisoners learned that Mayor Quincy Sharp was inside the church, and all hell breaks loose as they storm the building to get to Sharp. Cash and his men do their best to protect the place against hundreds of prisoners, but they couldn't stop them when Bane joined the thugs, plowing through the defenses of the church and breaking into the sanctuary looking for more Titan. Everything was seemingly lost and hopeless, but there was someone watching the siege of the Arkham Church from afar, and before Bane and the thugs could create more chaos, Azrael jumped into battle as the final line of defense of the weak against the evil forces of Arkham. The light of Azrael pushed back the darkness, and after a glorious fight against Bane and the thugs, the church was saved from a certain doom. In the end, Vicky Vale talks to Cash and tells him how all of what just happened was almost like a miracle, and Cash is just grateful that he has two guardian angels looking out for him, because maybe that's what it takes to survive in Arkham City. This is, without a question, the best story of Arkham Unhinged, showing in an awesome way that darkness never stands a chance against the light. This chapter also reveals the origin story of Azrael in the Arkham universe, giving the character a lot more depth than he ever gets in any of the games. As I said before, that's the great thing about this series, as it allows us to see stories about characters that were barely in the game. The next one of those was the Black Mask chapter, where the whole story of Black Mask in the Arkham universe is explained, even though the character only has a very small cameo that a lot of players probably missed at the start of the game. The creative team behind the series really put a lot of effort looking for the smallest detail in order to expand the story of Arkham City, down to the shortest lines of dialogue.
You didn't need to get yourself arrested to see me, Bruce. After that night we spent in Metropolis, you could have just called.
That night in Metropolis was finally expanded in issue number 14, and besides showing the obvious thing that happened, the story also reveals the first meeting between Batman and Talia, explaining how Bruce saved Talia from assassins that wanted to steal the Chalice of Destiny from Ra's al Ghul. And it's great because this is the exact same chalice that Batman drinks the blood of the demon from in that part of the game. And finally, there's issue number 15, which takes place at the start of Protocol 10. When Hugo Strange begins the systematic destruction of Arkham City, he also activates Protocol 9, which is the destruction of Wayne Manor. This is how Hugo Strange sends the Tiger forces to blow up Wayne Manor, but they are all stopped thanks to Robin, Nightwing and Alfred working together to save their home. And I like this chapter because it shows us why Robin didn't just come back to Arkham City when Protocol 10 began. He was just busy ruining the other plans of Hugo Strange. That was issue number 15, and this is truly the final story of Arkham Unhinged, even though the series lasted until issue number 20. So what happened in the final 5 chapters? Well, the sad reality is that the final chapters of the series are a complete and utter fall from grace. Starting in issue number 16, the main writer, Derek Fridolfs, was replaced, and the series abandoned the single story format that connected the characters and plot points of the game. Instead, the new creative team decided to start an epic storyline that was once again a prequel to Arkham City, taking place in the early days leading up to the opening of the prison. This new chapter of the series completely ignores all of the relevant elements of the game, and instead it introduces a new villain called the Bookbinder, who is responsible for starting a social and political revolution in Gotham. This change of direction was rather extreme, and it made for a really boring storyline. They were probably trying to show how things changed in Gotham with all the criminals and crazies locked away in Arkham City, but the problem is that none of the things they show are interesting at all. The story is too concerned with political, social and economic issues that are quite complex and not entertaining whatsoever. One example of that is how the Bookbinder attacks actors and entertainers because he blames them for making society too dumb. Then he goes after the CEO of a fast food company for making people too unhealthy. That is all well and good, but what on earth does any of that have to do with Arkham City? The only connection the story has to the game is that the villain creates such chaos that Mayor Sharp starts taking extreme measures against the civilians, and the people start gathering and protesting against the new prison. These moments, however, add nothing to the story, and they only work as heavy-handed commentary about social violence, riots, and abuse of power. I have never seen a series go off the rails so badly as the final issues of Arkham Unhinged, which turned the series into a political statement disguised as an Arkham City comic. If the point was to see what happened in Gotham because of Arkham City, there were much more interesting ideas they could have explored. Maybe Gotham became a safer city, and crime was not a problem. Maybe everything was too perfect, and Batman was not needed anymore, and the reason he decided to go inside Arkham City was because he was feeling useless. Or maybe the only criminals left in Gotham were the rich bodies of Bruce Wayne, and Batman had to choose between going after them or solving the problems of Arkham City. Or maybe the only crime in Gotham was a mystery about missing doctors that went into Arkham City and never came back. Any of those ideas would have been really interesting, and this final storyline could have been the perfect opportunity to do it. But none of that happened, and these final 5 chapters were completely squandered. The storyline was such utter trash that the whole series was cancelled in the middle of this final story, and it was never finished. The real tragedy there is that Arkham Unhinged was a good series before that, thanks to Derek Fridolfs, who managed to tell engaging and fun stories set in the context of Arkham City. Sadly, DC Comics made some really dumb changes, and the new writer is responsible for sealing the fate of the series for good. And that is how it happened. That is how Batman, Arkham Unhinged, died. But this was not the end for the comics based on Arkham City. Even after all that debacle, DC still had one more comic left in them, and Derek Fridolfs came back for one last dance. The final comic based on Arkham City was once again a digital comic released in 2012, with a printed version coming out 1 year later. It was called Batman Arkham City Endgame, and it was a one-shot story written by Derek Fridolfs and illustrated by Jason Shawn Alexander. And the interesting thing about this final Arkham City comic is that it completely takes place after the events of the game. The story picks up right after Batman takes the Joker's dead body out of Arkham City and leaves it to Commissioner Gordon, who now has to deal with the consequences of this situation. The GCPD has to take back control of Arkham City, but Joker's men are now led by Harley Quinn, and all of them start violent riots in the name of their fallen leader. At first, all of this looks like random violence as a result of Joker's death, but in reality, the riots and destruction were part of a calculated plan by the Joker himself, who had left clear instructions for all of his people in case he died inside Arkham City. Part of the plan was to start these riots in order to create a distraction so that Harley could hijack the broadcast signal inside Arkham and send a video to all of Gotham. The Joker had pre-recorded a message before dying, telling the people of Gotham that whoever finds his dead body and brings it back to Harley could get $100 million. This is how the Joker sends all of Gotham into a raging chaos, as everyone starts looking for the body, breaking into hospitals, morgues, and every place that his body could be. Gordon manages to hide the Joker's body in time, in a secret place that only Batman knew about. The only problem now is that the Joker's men inside Arkham City claim that they have bombs all over the walls, and they would blow them up, releasing all of Arkham prisoners if nobody finds Joker's body within 24 hours. Time was running out, and Batman only had one clue that Joker left for him in the pre-recorded message. Joker had apparently left the key to deactivate the bombs, and it was hidden in a secret cell in Arkham Asylum. Batman has no choice but to go back to the abandoned place, where he gets flashbacks about that specific cell and how Joker was locked there in solitary confinement. In the dark cell, Batman only finds a book, a sort of diary or journal, where the Joker wrote his ultimate master plan. As Batman reads all about it, the doors of the cell close shut, and a massive bomb blows up the place with Batman still locked inside. This was the Joker's endgame. There were never any bombs at Arkham City, and there was no prize money for finding his body. All of that was just a big bluff, a great mass manipulation in the classic Joker trademark. It was all a careful plan to lure Batman into the ultimate trap, where the Dark Knight would be killed. And I love that, because the Joker had prepared all of this so that when he dies, Batman dies with him. That would have been a great way to end the legacy of Joker, but as we all know, Batman always finds a way out of any death trap, and this time it was no different. Somehow, Batman saved himself from the explosions, and after all of Joker's plan was exposed, he and Gordon were finally able to get rid of Joker's corpse, placing it inside a dark incinerator and burning the body to ashes. That is quite the perfect ending, because this is exactly how the next game, Arkham Knight, begins. Once again, the comics fill the gaps between the games, only this time the comic came first, and it clearly worked as an inspiration for the final game. The comics based on Arkham City started out as a clever marketing strategy, but they ended up shaping the future of the franchise itself, expanding the history of this universe and allowing us to have more fun in this world beyond the limits of the gameplay. And that's why I needed to talk about them, because these comics are part of the legacy of the iconic Arkham saga, and yet they remain criminally underrated. The good news is that all of these stories and more have already been collected in Batman, the Arkham Saga Omnibus, which is a massive collection and an absolute must for any hardcore fans of the games. And with all of that said, thank you all so much for watching this video, and a special thanks to Thomas Murray, John Papp, Marco Daniel, Wall Scalar Batman, Discarded Owl, MP, Ace Mowick, Rocco, and VideoGamer75. Thank you so much for your support, and I will see you in the next one.